Dyer Lena Martinez stepped carefully through the thick forest of Kepler 442c, her boots sinking slightly into the soft purple moss that covered the ground like a living carpet. The trees here were nothing like those on Earth, with silver bark that seemed to shimmer in the alien sunlight and leaves that changed color as she walked past them. She had been studying this planet for 3 weeks now, and every day brought new discoveries that amazed her. Elena was a xenobiologist, which meant she studied alien life forms. She had dreamed of this job since she was a little girl, reading about distant worlds and strange creatures in her father's science books. Now here she was, millions of miles from Earth, surrounded by life forms that no human had ever seen before. The research vessel Columbia orbited high above the planet, but Elena and her team had set up a temporary camp in a clearing about 2 miles from where she now stood. They were collecting samples of plants and small animals, trying to understand how life worked on this strange world. The planet had been discovered only 5 years ago, and the scientists back on Earth were eager to learn everything they could about it. Elena stopped beside a tree with bright blue flowers and carefully took pictures with her scanner. The flowers seemed to glow with their own light, and when she moved closer, they turned toward her like they were watching. She made notes in her tablet, describing the way the petals moved and the sweet smell they gave off. The forest was full of sounds that were both beautiful and strange. There were chirping calls from small creatures hidden in the trees, low humming sounds that seemed to come from the plants themselves, and occasionally a deep roar in the distance that made Elena's heart beat faster. Her team had warned her about the larger predators on this planet, especially the creature they had named the Shadowclaw. From the tracks they had found, the Shadowclaw was huge, probably 8 feet tall when it stood on its back legs. It had claws that could cut through metal and teeth designed for tearing flesh. The fur samples they had collected were black as night, and the few blurry photos they had managed to take showed glowing amber eyes that seemed to see everything. Elena had never seen one up close, and she hoped she never would. The sky above began to darken as thick clouds rolled in from the west. Elena looked up with concern. The weather on Kepler 442c could change very quickly, and the storms here were much more violent than anything on Earth. She checked her watch and realized she had wandered farther from camp than she had planned. She needed to get back before the storm hit. Elena turned around and started walking quickly back toward camp, but the forest looked different now. The changing light made everything seem unfamiliar, and she realized with growing worry that she might be lost. She pulled out her communication device and tried to contact her team, but all she got was static. The incoming storm was interfering with the signal. The first drops of rain began to fall, and within minutes it became a downpour. The rain here was warm, but fell so hard that Elena could barely see 10 feet in front of her. Lightning flashed overhead, followed by thunder that shook the ground beneath her feet. She needed to find shelter quickly. Elena ran through the forest, looking for any place to hide from the storm. The rain was soaking through her protective suit, and the wind was getting stronger. She stumbled over roots and pushed through bushes, trying to find her way back to camp, or at least find somewhere dry to wait out the storm. That was when she saw the dark opening in a rocky hillside. It looked like a cave, and Elena ran toward it without thinking. She was so focused on getting out of the rain that she didn't notice the large paw prints in the mud outside the entrance, or the way the ground around the cave was marked with deep scratches. Elena ducked into the cave and immediately felt relief as the sound of the storm became muffled. She wiped the water from her face and turned on the small light attached to her suit. The cave was larger than she had expected, with smooth walls that curved back into darkness. She took a few steps inside, grateful to be dry. Then she heard a low growling sound that made her blood freeze. Elena slowly turned her light toward the back of the cave, and her heart nearly stopped. There, lying on the cave floor, was the largest creature she had ever seen. It was a shadow claw, and it was staring right at her with those glowing amber eyes. But this shadow claw was hurt. Elena could see deep gashes along its side, and there was blood on the cave floor. The creature was breathing heavily, and Elena could tell it was in pain. Worse yet, there were 3 small forms huddled behind the injured predator. Cubs. This was a mother shadow claw, and she was protecting her babies. Elena knew she should run. Every instinct told her to get out of the cave as fast as possible, but something made her stop. Maybe it was her scientific training, or maybe it was something deeper. The mother shadow claw was not attacking. She was just watching Elena with those intelligent eyes, and Elena could see something in them that she recognized. Fear. Not fear of Elena, but fear for her cubs. The mother tried to lift her head, but the effort was too much. She fell back down with a soft whimper that sounded almost human. Elena realized that this magnificent creature was dying. The wounds were too deep, and she had lost too much blood. Without help, she would not survive the night, and her cubs would be left alone in a dangerous world. Elena made a decision that would change everything. Instead of running away, she slowly sat down near the entrance of the cave. She kept her movements gentle and spoke in a soft voice, even though she knew the creature could not understand her words. But tone was universal, and Elena hoped the mother would understand that she meant no harm. The storm raged outside, but inside the cave, something extraordinary was happening. The mother shadow claw looked at Elena for a long moment, and then she did something that no predator had ever done in the history of the galaxy. She slowly, carefully moved away from her cubs and retreated to the back of the cave. Elena stared in amazement. The mother was not just allowing a strange creature near her babies. She was presenting them to Elena, offering them to her care. It was an act of trust so complete and so desperate that Elena felt tears come to her eyes. This alien mother was trusting her, a human, with the most precious things in her world. Elena sat very still for what felt like hours, watching the 3 small cubs huddled together in the middle of the cave. The mother shadow claw had moved as far back as she could, her amber eyes never leaving Elena's face. The message was clear, even without words. The mother was saying, "Please, help them. I cannot do this alone." The cubs were much smaller than Elena had expected, about the size of house cats, but with the same black fur and glowing eyes as their mother. They pressed against each other for warmth and comfort, making soft mewing sounds that reminded Elena of kittens back on Earth. But these were not kittens. Even as babies, she could see the sharp claws and teeth that would one day make them apex predators. Elena slowly reached into her medical kit, moving carefully so she would not frighten anyone. The mother watched every movement, but did not growl or show any signs of aggression. Elena pulled out her scanner and aimed it at the wounded creature. The readings made her heart sink. The mother had lost a lot of blood, and her body temperature was dropping. Without treatment, she would die within hours. At first, Elena needed to take care of the cubs. They looked hungry and scared, and she could hear their tiny stomachs rumbling. Elena opened her emergency food pack and pulled out some protein bars. She broke off small pieces and placed them on the ground between herself and the cubs, then scooted back to give them space. The boldest of the 3 cubs, one with a white patch on its chest, crept forward to sniff the food. Elena watched as the little creature took a tiny bite, chewed thoughtfully, then grabbed the piece and ran back to its siblings. Soon all 3 were eating, their eyes never leaving Elena's face. Elena decided to give them names so she could tell them apart. Brave one with the white patch she called Nova because it reminded her of a bright star. The second cub, slightly larger with intelligent eyes that seemed to study everything. She named Comet, the smallest one who stayed close to the others and seemed the most gentle. She called Star. While the cubs ate, Elena turned her attention to their mother. She opened her medical kit and pulled out antiseptic, bandages, and a pain medication that worked on most alien species. The mother Shadowclaw watched Elena approach, but did not move away. She seemed to understand that Elena was trying to help. Elena worked carefully, cleaning the deep wounds on the mother's side. The creature flinched, but did not snap or try to bite. Elena could feel the powerful muscles under the soft fur, and she knew that this predator could kill her with one swipe of its claws. But the mother lay still, trusting Elena completely. As Elena worked, she talked softly to the injured creature. She knew the words meant nothing to the alien, but her tone was calm and reassuring. Elena told her about Earth, about her own family, about how she had always wanted to help animals. The mother's breathing began to slow and deepen as the pain. Medication took effect. Elena decided to call the mother Luna because of her beautiful silver-amber eyes that reminded Elena of moonlight. Luna was magnificent even in her injured state, with muscles that spoke of incredible strength and grace. Elena could imagine her running through the forest, a shadow among shadows, protecting her cubs from any threat. The storm outside was getting worse, and Elena realized she might be trapped in the cave for the entire night. She tried her communicator again, but there was still no signal. Her team would be worried about her, but there was nothing she could do about that now. She had to focus on keeping Luna and the cubs alive. As the hours passed, something amazing began to happen. The cubs started to show interest in Elena beyond just the food she provided. Nova, the brave one, began to approach her more closely. At first, the little cub would dart forward, touch Elena's hand with its nose, then run back to its siblings. But gradually, Nova became braver. Elena sat very still as Nova climbed onto her lap. The cub was warm and surprisingly heavy for its size. It looked up at Elena with those glowing amber eyes and made a soft purring sound. Elena slowly reached out and gently petted the soft black fur. Nova's purring grew louder, and soon Comet and Star were also approaching. Luna watched all of this with what Elena could only describe as wonder. The great predator's eyes moved between Elena and her cubs, and Elena could see intelligence there that was almost human. Luna was learning something about humans that no Shadowclaw had ever known before. She was seeing that some creatures could be kind to others who were completely different from themselves. Elena pulled out a small solar charger and connected it to her tablet. Even in the dim light of the cave, it would slowly charge her devices. She wanted to document everything that was happening. This was the first peaceful contact between humans and Shadowclaws, and it was important to record it. The cubs seemed fascinated by Elena's technology. Comet, the intelligent one, watched intently as Elena used her tablet. When Elena showed the cubs pictures of Earth animals, they made excited chirping sounds and tried to touch the screen with their tiny paws. Star, the gentle one, seemed more interested in Elena herself, curling up against her side and falling asleep. Elena took pictures of the cubs and showed them to Luna. The mother's reaction was extraordinary. She moved closer, despite her injuries, and stared at the images of her babies on the screen. Elena could see that Luna understood what she was looking at. This was not just an animal looking at strange lights. This was a mother recognizing pictures of her children. As the night wore on, Elena realized that something incredible was happening. She was not just helping wounded animals. She was forming a bond with an alien family. Luna trusted her completely now, and the cubs had accepted her as part of their pack. When Elena moved, they followed her. When she rested, they curled up around her for warmth. Elena found herself changing too. She had always loved animals, but this was different. These creatures were so intelligent, so capable of emotion and trust, that Elena began to think of them not as subjects to study, but as friends. When Nova brought her a pretty stone it had found in the cave, Elena accepted it like a gift from a human child. The storm finally began to quiet as dawn approached. Elena checked Luna's wounds and was pleased to see that the bleeding had stopped. The great predator was still weak, but she was going to survive. The cubs were healthy and active, playing together and treating Elena like part of their family. Elena knew she would have to leave eventually. Her team would be looking for her, and she could not stay in the cave forever. But as she watched Luna's family, she realized that this experience had changed her forever. She had been trusted by creatures that should have seen her as an enemy, and that trust had created something beautiful and impossible. 3 days had passed since Elena found herself trapped in the cave with Luna and her cubs. The storm had ended, but Elena chose to stay. Her emergency supplies were running low, but she could not bring herself to leave the alien family that had come to trust her so completely. Elena had tried her communicator several times, but the signal was still too weak to reach her team. She knew they probably thought she was dead. Search parties would have looked for her during the storm, but the weather had been too dangerous for a thorough search. By now, they might have given up hope of finding her alive. But Elena was very much alive, and she was learning things about the shadow claws that no human had ever known. The cubs were incredibly intelligent, much smarter than any Earth animal she had studied. They learned quickly and seemed to understand cause and effect in ways that amazed her. Nova, the brave cub with the white patch, had learned to respond to Elena's voice. When Elena called her name, Nova would come running from wherever she was, playing in the cave. The little cub had also learned that Elena needed certain things to stay healthy. When Elena's water bottle was empty, Nova would go to the back of the cave where water dripped from the ceiling and guide Elena there with soft chirping sounds. Comet, the intelligent one, was even more remarkable. He watched everything Elena did with intense curiosity. When Elena used her tablet, Comet would sit beside her and stare at the screen. Elena began to suspect that Comet was actually learning to read the symbols and numbers on her device. When she showed him pictures, he would make different sounds for different images, as if he was trying to name them. Star, the smallest and gentlest cub, had become Elena's constant companion. The little creature rarely left Elena's side, and when Elena slept, Star would curl up against her for warmth. Star seemed to sense Elena's emotions in an almost supernatural way. When Elena felt sad or worried, Star would nuzzle against her and purr softly until Elena felt better. Luna was healing well, but she remained in the back of the cave, watching her cubs interact with the human. Elena could see the wonder in Luna's eyes as she observed behaviors that no Shadow Claw had ever displayed before. The cubs were learning things from Elena that they never could have learned from their own kind. Elena began teaching the cubs simple lessons, treating them like the intelligent beings they clearly were. She showed them how to identify which plants were safe to eat by using her scanner. At first, this was just practical knowledge because her food supplies were almost gone. But soon Elena realized she was doing something much more important. She was teaching them to think before they acted, to use tools to solve problems, and to consider the future consequences of their choices. The cubs proved to be excellent students. When Elena showed them how her scanner worked, they quickly learned to associate the green light with safe plants and the red light with dangerous ones. Soon they were bringing her plants they had tested themselves, chirping proudly when the scanner showed green. But the most amazing lesson came when Elena taught them about sharing and fairness. Earth predators usually competed fiercely for food, with the strongest taking the most. But Elena showed the cubs a different way. When she had food, she divided it equally among all 3 cubs. Making sure each one got the same amount dotted first, Nova tried to take food from her smaller siblings, which was normal predator behavior. But Elena gently stopped her and showed her again how to share. Within days, the cubs were dividing food equally among themselves without Elena's help. They had learned that cooperation could be better than competition. Luna watched these lessons with growing amazement. Elena could see the great predator's mind working, trying to understand how these new ideas could benefit her species. Luna was learning too, even though Elena was not directly teaching her. Elena's most important lesson came when she fell sick on the 4th day. She had been drinking water from the cave and eating unfamiliar plants, and her human digestive system finally rebelled. She developed a fever and became too weak to move around the cave. The cubs immediately sensed that something was wrong with their human friend. They gathered around Elena, pressing their warm bodies against her for comfort. But Luna did something that stunned Elena completely. The great Shadow Claw left the cave for the first time since Elena had found her. Luna was still not fully healed, but she forced herself to move. Elena was too sick to follow, but she could hear Luna's heavy footsteps moving away through the forest. Hours passed, and Elena began to worry that Luna had abandoned them. Maybe the mother had decided that Elena was too much trouble, too different from her own kind. But just as Elena was losing hope, she heard footsteps returning to the cave. Luna came back, carrying something in her mouth. Elena could hardly believe what she was seeing. Luna had gone to the abandoned human research camp and brought back Elena's own medical supplies. Somehow, the alien predator had understood what Elena needed and had gone to get it for her. But that was not the most amazing part. Luna had also brought back Elena's emergency food packs, her water purification tablets, and even her spare battery pack. The Shadow Claw had learned to recognize human artifacts and understand their purposes. She had become a student of human technology, learning it well enough to help her human friend. Elena used the medicine to treat her fever, and within hours she felt much better. But the real healing came from the knowledge that Luna cared enough about her to risk leaving the safety of the cave. The bond between them had grown beyond simple trust. They had become family. As Elena recovered, she realized that something extraordinary was happening to all of them. The cubs were developing in ways that no Shadow Claw cubs had ever developed before. They were learning patience, empathy, and cooperation. They were becoming something new, something that combined the best of both human and Shadow Claw nature. Nova was learning to be brave without being reckless, to protect others instead of just herself. Comet was using his intelligence, not just to hunt, but to solve complex problems and help his family. Star was developing an emotional intelligence that allowed her to comfort others and build strong social bonds. Luna was changing too. The great predator was learning that strength did not always mean violence, that wisdom could be more powerful than claws, and that trust could create possibilities that fear never could. Elena looked around the cave that had become her home and realized that she did not want to leave. Here, in this impossible place, she had found something more valuable than any scientific discovery. She had found a family that crossed the boundaries of species, and she had learned that love and trust could exist anywhere in the universe. Elena knew that eventually she would have to make a choice. Her human world was looking for her, and Luna's world was dangerous for someone who was not a Shadow Claw. The question was whether the bond they had built could survive in the larger universe, or whether it could only exist in the safety of their cave. On the 7th day, Elena heard the sound she had been both hoping for and dreading. The deep rumble of human aircraft engines echoed through the forest, growing louder as they approached. Her team had finally found her signal. Elena's communicator. had managed to connect with the rescue ship Endeavour that morning, and now Captain Jake Morrison was coming to bring her home. Elena looked at Luna and the cubs, who had all gathered around her when they heard the strange sounds from above. The cubs pressed against Elena's legs, sensing that something important was happening. Luna stood tall and alert, her amber eyes fixed on Elena's face. The great Shadowclaw seemed to understand that their time together was ending. Elena heard voices calling her name through the forest. Her teammates were close now, probably only a few hundred yards from the cave. Elena knew she had to make a decision quickly. She could try to hide Luna and the cubs, or she could trust that her fellow humans would understand what she had discovered here. Elena made her choice. She walked to the mouth of the cave and called out to her rescuers. "Within minutes, Captain." Morrison appeared through the trees, followed by his security chief Lisa Hayes and 2 other crew members. They were all armed and wearing full protective gear, expecting to find either Elena's body or a traumatized survivor dot. Instead, they found Elena standing calmly at the entrance to a cave, looking healthy and surprisingly peaceful. But their relief quickly turned to shock when they saw what was behind her. Luna stepped out of the shadows, her massive form towering over the humans. The cubs stayed close to Elena's sides, their amber eyes watching the newcomers with curiosity rather than fear. Lisa immediately raised her weapon, but Elena quickly stepped between the humans and the Shadowclaws. She held up her hands and spoke. In a calm, firm voice, she told them that these creatures were her friends, that they had saved her life, and that any threat to them would be a threat to her as well. Captain Morrison stared in disbelief. He had read all the reports about Shadowclaws, had seen the pictures of their deadly claws and massive teeth. These were supposed to be the most dangerous predators on the planet. Yet here was Elena, standing unharmed among them like they were house pets. Elena began to explain what had happened, but she could see the doubt in her teammates' eyes. The story sounded impossible. A wounded predator trusting a human with her cubs. A human teaching alien creatures about cooperation and sharing. An 8-foot-tall killing machine bringing medicine to help a sick human. It sounded like fantasy. Then Nova did something that changed everything. The brave little cub walked up to Captain Morrison and gently touched his boot with her nose. She looked up at him with those glowing amber eyes and made a soft chirping sound, the same sound she used to greet Elena each morning. Morrison looked down at the cub in amazement. This creature showed no fear of him, no aggression, only curiosity. He slowly knelt down, and Nova allowed him to touch her soft black fur. The other crew members watched in stunned silence as the deadly predator, cub purred like a kitten under Morrison's gentle touch. Comet, always the intelligent one, approached Lisa Hayes with something in his mouth. He dropped a small device at her feet and backed away politely. Lisa picked it up and gasped. It was Elena's emergency beacon, the one that had been missing from her gear. Comet had found it and was returning it to the humans, understanding somehow that it was important to them. Star, the gentle cub, did something even more remarkable. She sensed that the humans were nervous and afraid, so she began to perform a series of movements that Elena had taught her. Star showed them how she could share food, how she could comfort others, and how she could solve simple puzzles using the tools Elena had made for her. The crew watched in amazement as the cubs demonstrated intelligence and emotional awareness that rivaled any Earth animal. These were not mindless predators. These were thinking, feeling beings who had learned to trust and cooperate with humans. But the real test came when Luna made her choice. The great Shadowclaw looked at Elena for a long moment, then walked slowly toward Captain Morrison. The humans tensed, ready to defend themselves, but Luna's movements were calm and deliberate. She stopped in front of Morrison and did something that no one expected. Luna gently nudged her cubs toward the human captain, then stepped back. It was the same gesture she had made with Elena a week ago, the gesture that meant trust. Luna was telling Morrison that she trusted him with her most precious possessions, her children. Morrison understood immediately. This was not just an animal, behaving strangely. This was a mother making a conscious choice to trust an alien species with her family's safety. The magnitude of that trust hit him like a physical blow. Luna was gambling everything on the hope that humans were as good as Elena had shown them to be. Elena watched as her teammates began to understand what she had discovered. These shadow claws were not just intelligent animals. They were people, different from humans, but capable of the same emotions, the same capacity for love and trust and hope. They were a species that could learn and grow and change, just like humans could. Lisa slowly holstered her weapon and knelt down beside the cubs. She spoke to them in the same gentle voice Elena used, and the cubs responded by moving closer too. Within minutes, all 3 cubs were exploring the new humans with the same friendly curiosity they had shown. Elena, Captain Morrison made a decision that would change everything. Instead of ordering Elena to leave immediately, he asked if she wanted to stay longer. He had seen enough to know that something extraordinary was happening here, something that could change the relationship between humans and shadow claws forever. Elena looked at Luna, who seemed to understand the question, even though she could not understand the words. A great shadow claw moved close to Elena and rested her massive head against Elena's shoulder. It was a gesture of love and gratitude, but also of letting go. Luna was telling Elena that she was free to choose her own path. Elena realized that Luna had given her something more valuable than trust. Luna had given her a choice. Elena could stay with her alien family, or she could return to her human world and share what she had learned. Either choice would be respected and supported. Elena made her decision. She would go back to the human world, but not to leave Luna and the cubs behind. She would go back to tell the story of what she had found, to show other humans that friendship and trust could exist between any species willing to try. Luna seemed to understand, and she did something that amazed everyone present. She approached Captain Morrison again and repeated the trust gesture, but this time she was not just offering her cubs. She was offering herself, her species, her world. Luna was asking if humans wanted to be friends with shadow claws, not just with her family, but with all her people. Morrison looked into Luna's intelligent amber eyes and saw the future. He saw a world where 2 different species could live together, learn from each other, and build something better than either could create alone. He reached out his hand, and Luna gently touched it with her nose, sealing a friendship that would change both their worlds forever. 6 months had passed since Elena returned to Earth with the most important discovery in human history. The video recordings she brought back showed the galaxy something that had never been seen before. A human and an alien predator family living together as equals. Scientists, politicians, and ordinary people around the world watched in amazement as Elena played with Shadowclaw cubs and shared meals with their mother. Elena had become famous overnight, but fame was not what she wanted. She spent her days giving lectures about what she had learned on Kepler 442c, trying to make people understand that Shadowclaws were not monsters, but intelligent beings capable of love and friendship. She showed them pictures of Nova bringing her gifts, of Comet solving puzzles, of Star comforting her when she was sad. But Elena's heart remained on that distant planet with the family that had trusted her. Every night she dreamed of amber eyes and soft purring sounds. She missed the warmth of the cubs sleeping against her side and the proud way Luna watched her children learn new things. Elena had found her real family among the stars, and now she was separated from them by millions of miles of empty space. The government officials and scientists who debriefed Elena were amazed by her findings. But they were also cautious. Many people still saw shadow claws as dangerous predators, despite Elena's evidence to the contrary. Some military leaders argued that humans should colonize Kepler 442c by force, using their superior technology to claim the planet for humanity. Elena fought against these ideas with all her strength. She told everyone who would listen that shadow claws were not animals to be conquered, but people to be befriended. She argued that cooperation would benefit both species far more than conflict ever could. Slowly, carefully, Elena began to change the way humans thought about their alien neighbors. The breakthrough came when Elena was chosen to lead the first official diplomatic mission back to Kepler 442c. The mission was not military, but peaceful, designed to establish formal contact with Shadow Claw society. Elena would return as an ambassador, representing all of humanity in their first attempt at interspecies friendship. Elena's hands shook with excitement as the transport ship Horizon entered orbit around Kepler 442c. She pressed her face against the window, looking down at the purple forests and silver rivers she had come to love. Somewhere down there, Luna and her cubs were waiting. Elena hoped they remembered her. The landing was different this time. Instead of a small research camp, the humans established a proper diplomatic outpost with medical facilities, communication equipment, and comfortable living quarters. Elena insisted that the outpost be built at the edge of Shadow Claw territory, close enough to show respect, but far enough away to avoid seeming threatening. Elena's first task was to find Luna and her family. She walked into the forest with a small team, following the path to the cave where everything had begun. Her heart pounded with anticipation and worry. What if Luna had moved away? What if the cubs had forgotten her? What if something had happened to them during the long months she had been gone? But her fears disappeared the moment she heard a familiar sound echoing through the trees. It was Nova's excited chirping call, the same sound the brave cub had made whenever Elena returned from gathering food. Elena ran toward the sound and found herself face to face with three young Shadow Claws who were no longer cubs but not yet adults. Nova was still the bravest, but she had grown large and strong. The white patch on her chest had grown too, making her easy to recognize even at a distance. She bounded toward Elena with pure joy, nearly knocking the human over with her enthusiasm. Nova had not forgotten her human friend. Comet had grown into his intelligence, becoming tall and thoughtful. He approached Elena more carefully than Nova, but his amber eyes shone with happiness. He carried something in his mouth, and when he dropped it at Elena's feet, she gasped with amazement. It was a tool, a simple device made from stone and plant, fibers that Comet had created himself. He was showing Elena that he had continued learning and creating even after she left. Star had grown into her gentleness, becoming graceful and empathetic. She moved close to Elena and rested her head against the human's shoulder, purring softly. Elena could feel that Star sensed her emotions just as well as ever, understanding Elena's joy at being reunited with her family. But the greatest surprise came when Luna appeared. The great Shadow Claw was no longer alone. Behind her came other adult Shadow Claws, and Elena realized with wonder that Luna had brought her entire extended family to meet the returning human. Luna had been teaching other Shadow Claws about humans, sharing the lessons she had learned during those days in the cave. Elena watched in amazement as Luna's relatives approached without fear or aggression. These Shadow Claws had never met a human before, but they had heard Luna's stories. They came forward with gifts, beautiful stones, rare flowers, and handmade tools. They were welcoming Elena back not as a stranger, but as a friend of the family. Luna stepped forward and touched Elena's hand with her nose, just as she had done when Captain Morrison first visited the cave. But this time, the gesture meant something even more important. Luna was formally presenting Elena to her people as a trusted friend and ally. Over the following weeks, Elena established the first human Shadowclaw cultural exchange program. Young Shadowclaws came to the human outpost to learn about technology and science. While human researchers went into the forest to study Shadowclaw society and wisdom, Elena discovered that Luna's influence had spread far beyond her own family. The lessons about cooperation and trust that Elena had taught the cubs had been passed on to other Shadowclaw families. A whole generation of young Shadowclaws was growing up with new ideas about problem-solving, sharing, and peaceful conflict. Resolution. The cubs, now young adults, had become teachers themselves. Nova led expeditions that helped lost humans find their way safely through the forest. Comet worked with human scientists to develop new tools that combined human technology with Shadowclaw craftsmanship. Star became a translator and mediator, helping humans and Shadowclaws understand each other's emotions and intentions. But the most amazing development was the integrated nursery that Elena helped establish. Human children and Shadowclaw cubs played together under the watchful eyes of both species' parents. The young ones learned each other's languages, shared each other's games, and formed friendships that would last their entire lives. Elena often sat with Luna on a hill overlooking the nursery, watching their two species' children grow up together. Luna's trust in a single human had created ripples that spread across both their worlds. The impossible bond formed in a cave during a storm had grown into something that would benefit countless generations. Elena realized that she had found her true purpose among the stars. She was no longer just a scientist studying alien life. She had become a bridge between worlds, helping two different species learn that friendship and trust could overcome any barrier. The predator who had trusted a human with her cubs had given a galaxy its greatest gift, proof that love and understanding could exist anywhere in the universe.